I like to have clean hands. Some say I'm obsessed with clean. My wife certainly thinks so. And I guess, truth be told, I like clean hands. Of course, you would too if you'd been through what I've experienced. If you'd seen what I've seen. The corrosion, the rot, the decay. If you've seen it, touched it, smelled it. If you had been through all of that, you would like clean hands too. You see, I once had leprosy. I still have to be careful who I tell that to. It frightens some people, and I can't say that I really blame them. After all, leprosy is a slow, painful, killing disease that eats away your flesh and bones. It's contagious. That's why there are other lepers, usually alone or only with other lepers. And I was the one who preferred to be alone in my misery. I didn't like seeing what was happening to me, much less what was happening to the others with this dread disease. My family wanted to help me, and the truth is I needed their help. Therein was my dilemma. Without their help, I had no choice but to beg and to join one of the other leper communes. With their help, my mom would be forced to watch as my flesh was eaten away. And there was always the danger that she would catch it. I couldn't have that. So I decided to take off on my own for as long as I could. And that's how I came to hear about him. I was working my way up north, hoping to get as far away from my family so they would just forget about me and I could die in peace. When I heard all this commotion, it seems that this fisherman's mother had a high fever, the kind of fever that people just don't get over. And then this man went to her home and she was cured. Healed by this man, they were saying. And then they said people from all around with all sorts of diseases starting showing up at this fisherman's house. And this man was healing all of them too. Keeping my distance and my hands with the telltale evidence of my problem covered up, I asked who this man was and how might I find him. Then there was this noise up the road, just over the rise. It sounded like a mob coming. A large group of people came over the hill, and they were all following this one man. "That's him," someone said. "That's the man. He's coming this way." At that moment, I had one of those awful attacks of pain that are part of the experience with leprosy. It shot right up my hand and into my wrist. It was the disease telling me it was eating away at my flesh, taking my life from me one bite at a time. And this was a bad one. I had a few like it before. The pain's so intense you just want to grab at it, and like you could get a hold of it and just pull it out of your body and throw it away. But I had learned that grabbing at the pain only made it worse. The pain was so sharp it was all I could do to keep from crying out. I turned from the people nearby, hoping to get away as fast as I could before someone shouted, "Leper! Leper!" But the pain was too much. My vision blurred and I dropped to my knees to keep from falling to the ground. Panic swelled up. If someone tried to come to my aid, I would have to warn them, "Keep away!" And then the leper cries would start. I wanted to get back to my feet and get away as fast as I could, but my head was spinning. I opened my eyes and looked up. That man was still coming down the road toward me. I noticed that other people had fallen to their knees as well and were lifting their hands toward him like they were begging him to do something, maybe worshiping him. I stayed where I was. The pain peaked and was beginning to withdraw. The man saw me and headed straight toward me. Others were raising their hand toward him. I kept my hands covered, my hood up, my head down. And then before I knew it, there he was, directly in front of me, along with the crowd following him. I kept my eyes down toward the ground, my hands pulled back within my robe. And all of a sudden, I was angry. I was angry at this disease that was taking everything away from me. I was angry at people who reacted so repulsively at the sight of someone like me. I was angry. I was angry at God. That man started to move on past me. For some reason, I scooted over on my knees to block him. He stopped again. I slowly raised my head until I could see his face and he could see mine. Recognition of what I was came immediately in his eyes. But he didn't act in the least repulsed by the disease or by me. I don't know why I said it. It just came out. My guess is it was part anger and part hope. If you are willing, I said, you can make me clean. It was like a challenge, a dare. Now it was his turn to be angry. If I'm willing, it was like, who do you think I am? Do you think I'm like all the rest of these people? Do you think I'm cold and indifferent to your suffering? Do you think for a moment I am afraid of your disease? I immediately felt ashamed, like I had insulted and called into question someone who was too pure to ever be called into question or ever be insulted. I decided the best thing for me to do was to get away as quickly as possible before one of the others gets a look and cries leper. So I started to move. Then he said it. The words entered my mind and a feeling of warmth began to spread over my entire body. With the one thing I was missing and so desperately longed for. Hope. He said, I am willing. And then I realized he was touching me. He had reached out his hand, gone under my long sleeve, and taken hold of my hand. My diseased, rotting, dirty hand. Only my hand felt different. Suddenly I noticed the pain was gone. His hand pulled my hand out of the long sleeve of my robe, and I hesitated. I knew what my hand looked like, how it was drawn up, crusted with dead skin, oozing with active sores. But he gently pulled my hand out, and as he did, he spoke again. Be clean, he said. Clean. I didn't think that was a word that would ever apply to me again. Clean. I guess it is true. I am obsessed with clean hands. You would be too if your hands had ever been held by his.